Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name's Ella and let's talk about the February wrap-up because February was insane. February was the first month that I didn't have classes. I passed all my exams, so I was just off on my semester break, but I've read a lot. These are all the books, all the physical books I've read, plus ebooks and audiobooks. In total, I have read 22 books in February. I can't believe I'm saying that. That is insane. What did I do besides reading? I went to work, but basically while I was working I was listening to an audiobook. This is such a crazy month. Like, this is so heavy too, but let's get into it. I'm trying my best to keep this organized, but honestly, I'm just a mess. But let's get started. The first book I finished was Foxglove. This is book number 2 in the Belladonna series. And this book is connected to the first book, and oh my gosh, this is even better. I totally ate up Belladonna, but Foxglove, so good. This whole series, the love interest is Death, and like, how cool is that? Seriously, such a good book. And honestly, this is giving Bridgerton, but like darker, and I just love it so much. Book number 2 that I read is Onyx Storm, and I feel like everybody and their pet has read Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm, but oh my gosh, I made a whole reading vlog to this book, and that is coming out as well. But this book really, oh my gosh, it had me in such a chokehold. This was just incredible. I totally ate it up. For those who have not read the Empyrean series yet, all the way from Fourth Wing up to Onyx Storm, the book follows pretty much Violet. So she basically goes to this dragon college with Gaiath, and she was meant to be a scribe, which is more like a librarian in a way, but she got into the writer's quadrant. And from there on, the story just continues all the way through the books, and this book was my favorite by far out of the series. The way that this book took me apart, set me back together, and took me apart again is just insane. After these 2 books, I have no idea what I was reading in which order, but let's just continue. The next book I read was Quicksilver. And honestly, I went into this book not knowing a single thing, but this was so much fun. Seriously. This is another Shadow Daddy. We have a few good Shadow Daddies this month. I mean, let's talk about Xaden. Let's talk about Kingfisher. Oh my gosh. This was another 5-star read. This book follows Ceres, and she discovers the whole world of the Fae and just how she is connected. There will be a part 2 sooner. I think the end of this year there will be the part 2, I think October, November, somewhere there. And honestly, this book is just so amazing, and it's so worth the hype, and just the whole world is amazing. The Shadow Daddy is so good. And just Ceres is such a cool character, and I totally ate this up. I'm gonna sound like a broken record in this video because most of the books I read were just so incredible. But also the next book was Court by Tracy Wolff. This is book number 4 in the Crave series. This book follows Grace, and just the whole series follows Grace basically. And in the first book, she gets to this college not knowing about the unnatural, but the whole college is unnatural. So from there on, it just continues in all parts, and this book has just been one of the best out of the series so far, in my opinion. One book I was really excited for was Love Requires Chocolate, but sadly I did not like this as much. This was YA, and I think this has so much potential because this is about a girl going on a semester abroad in Paris, and it was so cute, but both of the characters were just so annoying, and not even in like a YA style, but really just cringy in a way. And I feel so bad saying this because I was so excited for this book, but it was still not a bad book. I just couldn't deal with the characters in the way they acted, the way they thought. So this was the first flop of the month. Next up, I finished Queen of Nothing. So I'm finally through the Cruel Prince trilogy, or is it the Elfhame trilogy? King of Elfhame? Something like that. But oh my gosh, this was one of the best books of the series. Like, I had my issues with the first book the first time I read it. The second time I read it, I loved it. Book number 2 was pretty good, but I feel like not that much happened. And book number 3, so much happened, and I loved it so much. Seriously, this was definitely my favorite out of the series, and I just love Cruel Prince so much. But it's not as romantic as I thought it would be, because I feel like this book is, or just the whole series is talked about so much on all of social media, but nobody tells you that this is really more fantasy, YA fantasy, than anything else. This book is definitely more romantic in a way, but the whole series is not, it's not a romantasy. So once you know that, you will love the series. I have read Credence, and let me tell you, oh my gosh, I read this so fast. This book was incredible. This was fucked up, honestly, but it was also just so intriguing. So this book is about Tiernan, and her parents pass away, so her dad's stepfather takes her in, and he lives in the mountains with his sons, and they all kind of want her in a way, and yeah, right. This book is as crazy as it sounds, honestly, let me tell you. But it's so intoxicating in a way because the characters are so good. The whole story was incredible, and honestly, I just ate it up fully. I definitely recommend this once you get past the age gap, but they did wait until she was 18. So, just saying, this is all legal, I guess. But if you want something crazy, I would almost say this is kind of like a dark romance. This is definitely not a cutesy romance book, but honestly, would you expect that from the cover? I knew what I was getting into. But this was so good. Next up we have It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and usually this author is either a hit or a miss, and this book was a hit. Oh my gosh. This was so good. This follows Piper and basically also her sister in a way, and they come to this super small town where her dad used to live before he passed away. They don't really know their dad, and they get there and they start renovating this bar. This book starts off as her being this rich LA girly and wanting to go back to LA, but she evolves so much in this book, and obviously she meets a guy in this small town and he's a captain. Just saying. This was really, really good, and honestly I loved the way that Piper evolved throughout the book and just the way their story developed also, because this was just so cutesy but also so spicy and just so deep all at once that I totally ate this up. These books were all the books that I read in physical form, so next up are my ebooks. So I read Infernal Ascendancy, and this book was so crazy, let me tell you, so definitely check out the trigger warnings before you even think about starting this book. But this is a dark fantasy romance in a way, but like really dark. Like, this is dark romance from its finest. So, oh my gosh, this book was crazy, but it was so addicting that I just couldn't put it down. And honestly, the writing of this book is so good. It's more like poetic in a way. You really need a couple pages to get used to this writing style, but honestly, once you're into the story, this book just picks up so fast, and just this book is crazy. So basically this book follows 3 characters, and this is about a fallen angel. She lost her wings and she dives into this whole other world, and there she meets one guy. He's also kind of a fallen angel in a way, and also a demon. This is why choose. Just saying. This book is why choose. Next up, I finished Sidetracked. This is book number 2 in the Mindfuck series. This follows an FBI profiler who's looking for a serial killer, but plot twist, his girlfriend is that serial killer. That is not a spoiler, by the way. You know that right from the beginning. And this is book number 2, and this series is super short, and I can't wait to continue because this is so good. Another dark romance I have read is Little Liar. This is book number 2 in the Web of Silence duet, and honestly, this book was so good. The first couple pages were a little bit slow because basically it just repeats book number 1 from his point of view, but from there on it picks up really fast, and oh my gosh, it was so intriguing, and just the whole background to Malachi was just so cool. But basically this whole duet follows Malachi and his adoptive sister. Yeah, you heard me right. And honestly, Malachi is, whew, he's darker than dark. You definitely need some experience of dark romance before you start this book, because if not, you will think I am crazy. You will think I'm crazy because I will recommend this to you. But it's so worth it because Malachi is so good. Next up, we have Kill Switch by Penelope Douglas. This is book number 3 in the Devil's Night series, and the whole series is connected. Book number 1 is Corrupt, book number 2 is Hideaway, and there's also a 4th book which is called Nightfall. Each book follows a different couple, and this book follows Damon and Winter. But the whole books are entwined, so to really get the full story, you do have to read the first books first to understand what was going on. But so far, Kill Switch was my absolute favorite because, oh my gosh, honestly, Damon is so crazy, but from the first book, I was intrigued, and just getting to know him even more in this book, it was just crazy, and he was so cool. Like, call me crazy, but I would choose Damon over quite a lot of guys. This guy, chef's kiss, really. But honestly, once you read this book, you really understand him a lot better, and you understand why he does things a certain way. And I'm not saying he's a good guy, because he really is not. He is a big fuck up, but oh my gosh, he's just so good. Another dark romance I read is Leave Me Behind by Kaya Moronova, and oh my gosh, this is a dark military romance. Bones and her nickname here was Bunny, and that was stuck in my head, but like Bones and Bunny both are in the same military team. Well, she gets transferred after her whole team basically dies. So she gets transferred to the team of Bones pretty much, and really, they're both crazy, they're both dark, but honestly, I could not put this book down because as dark as it is, as good it's also. And like, who says dark romance can't be romantic? Because they kind of were in a way. I loved their love story. I loved it. 10 out of 10 recommend. February really was the month for fantasy and dark romance because we have another dark romance coming up. So next up we have Stolen Heir by Sophie Lark, and this is book number 2 in the Brutal Birthright series. So in this book he kidnaps her to kind of get revenge for his dad, and oh my gosh, this book basically is a Stockholm Syndrome book, because why does she fall for him? This is crazy. But also this was so good, and just the whole thing was just so well written because Sophie Lark, she knows what she's doing. She just knows. Next up we have Blood of Hercules, and this is a dark fantasy in a way, and this wasn't as dark as I thought it would be after they read the trigger warnings to me. I listened to this as an audiobook, but the trigger warnings were like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then it wasn't quite as dark as I thought it would be, but this was so good too. Once again, I don't remember the names, but basically in this book there's like a trial, so you can participate to get into this. So basically I think they kind of fighting against titans in this book, and to be recruited you have to pass a certain test, and just there's a whole lot going on in this book. And this girl, she gets into this whole recruiting thing and she has some tutors, and just there's so much happening in there, and I really don't want to spoil anything. Don't worry, you're not rid of me just yet. We still have a bunch of books to talk about. But next up is Body Check by Elle Kennedy, and this cover is awful. Seriously. Who thought it would be a good idea to just put on a six-pack? Like a naked guy. Like, why? Why? Explain to me who thought this would be a good marketing thing. Because I can't agree. I don't want people to see that I'm reading a book with a pretty much naked guy on the cover. But this book was so good too. This is a hockey romance, and if Elle Kennedy can write one thing, it's a hockey romance, because oh my gosh, this book is so good. This is said to be one of her older books, but she rewrote it, and I read the new version, and it's just I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you love Elle Kennedy, or if you want to try Elle Kennedy, this book is definitely one I would recommend in a heartbeat to you. Honestly, I don't know a single thing about sports. I grew up here in Germany, and the only thing I kind of know a little bit is soccer, so don't come for me because I don't know anything about hockey. I don't know anything about any kind of sport, but another hockey romance will be on my TBR and will be on my wrap-up, because why are hockey romances so addicting? Oh my gosh. I have never watched a single hockey game, but oh my gosh, I want to. But next up we have The Golden Goal by Anna Conwell, and this book was so cute. Oh my gosh, this was really just super sweet. This was such a quick read, and this was another cutesy hockey romance. After finishing The Golden Goal, I continued with the author and the series. So next up we have The Perfect Putt, and this was really cool because it was kind of connected. So in book number 1, Shaw is the main character, and this book Miles is the main character. And oh my gosh, this was about golf, and I also don't know anything about golf. But this was so cool to read because she kind of hates golf and just anything, and well, she gets to be his assistant. Just it was so sweet. This was really so sweet, and I just loved to listen to this. I listened to this as an audiobook. We are nearing the end because next up we have The Impaler's Legend. This was an arc, but honestly I'm so happy that I applied to be in that arc too, because this book, whoa, this was so crazy. I'm still not over the last few pages. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? If you read the end, you will understand. Seriously. So this book comes out March 1st. So by the time this video is published, it's already out. So definitely go look at The Impaler's Legend, because oh my gosh. So this book is basically about a Transylvanian curse in a way, and you get to know so much about the whole Transylvanian culture in a way. And so this is about fairies and vampires, and just this book used to be 2 books, but this new version is both books combined. So the first half is book number 1, the second half is book number 2, but still the ending of book number 2. What do you mean? What do you mean? I ate this up. I ate this up. I ate this up. And honestly, like, I've never really thought much about Transylvania or like the culture of Transylvania, but this book really made me so curious about it. Seriously, definitely recommend this. I read another ebook. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I don't know how much time I have, but apparently a lot. So this book is Mr. Silver. This is book number 4 in The Kings of Cypress Point, and I have totally ate up the first 3 books. Like, wow. But this book is still pretty good, but not just quite. This book follows Sterling, and I think Lexi was her name. I'm so bad with names, seriously. But this book was pretty good because at first they don't really like each other, but because of kind of like a lie, they have to stick together and just... It's pretty good. But I have to admit, I preferred the first 3 books, and I'm not sure if I will continue because... Or is it book number 5? It might actually be book number 5. Because I know there's one more book in the series, and I'm not sure if I really want to read this. Because this book was a little bit weaker. Another flop. I was so excited for this book because this is another hockey book. This is Mr. Hockey by Leah Riley, and I was so looking forward to this because he's a hockey player and she's like a librarian, but this book was just feeding on cliches. And it was so cringy. It was so cringy. I'm sorry. I really tried to like this because it was also so short. And I tried my best to like this because it is a hockey romance, but yeah. It was a miss. It was a miss for me. I'm sorry, it was a miss for me. The last book! We are at the last book. This is book number 22. Book number 22. Crazy, right? But I have finished The Songbird and the Heart of Stone, and I'm so happy I read this because this is book number 3 in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. So book number 1 and 2 are about a different couple, but you get to know Mish in the first 2 books as well. The first book is The Serpent and the Wings of the Night, and it's such a good book, and definitely read the first 2 books before you look at this because they are kind of connected. You definitely understand this book a lot better once you've read the other 2. I think you actually have to read the other 2 in order to read this, but I'm not quite sure what the author says on that. But this book was so good, and it's fantasy, it's with vampires, and just the characters here are so complex, and the whole world building just continues throughout the series, and it's just so good. It's just so good. Honestly, I loved every page of this book, and I totally ate it up, and this was the perfect ending for February because this was the last book I finished, and it was just the perfect way to end February. So that was all. I had a crazy reading month. Like, I had such a crazy month and I had so many good books, but I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you so much for watching.